What about 2024? 2024 is, I don't care what standard you want to, relate to or have or hold up. 2024 is going to be a remarkable year. Now, whether it's going to be remarkable in a good sense or remarkable in an infamous sense, only time will tell. And there are indications both ways. But one of the indications on the infamous side, I want to talk about Gregg Abbott and what he's doing down in Texas. Couple days ago, to end out the year, he signed the bill, SB, I forget what it was, state bill, whatever it was in Texas, that allows any sworn law enforcement officer to detain or arrest an individual that they suspect of being an illegal alien. In other words, if you are not white, uh, speaking anything other than English, and you don't have your papers on you, any sworn Barney Fife in the state of Texas can take your ass to jail, and it's up to you to prove your way out. You get stuck in the system basically for doing nothing other than walking down the street. Now, as a black person, I can identify, I can empathize, and I think black people relate to this because it was after the Civil War, it was done to black people on a regular basis. Now, Gregg Abbott is claiming all of this under the 10th Amendment, much like he's claimed other things he's done concerning the border and brown people from coming across the border. The barriers, the barbed wire barriers in the Rio Grande, the raid on the island in the middle of the Rio Grande, um, his failed program of stopping trucks at the border, food trucks at the border to inspect them for transporting illegal aliens, which basically cost the state of Texas billions of dollars, ran up food prices in the United States at a time when inflation was a constantly daily rising thing, and lost more money for Texas and caused more hurt, harm, and pain to the country, then they didn't catch one illegal alien on any truck coming across those border checkpoints. Much like when they tie up the Texas National Guard and National Guardsmen from other Republican states where other Republican uh, governors want to stunt for the ultra right wing conservative movement and the Republican Party. Now, Gregg Abbott seems to be rebel in his open cruelty, his authoritarian heavy-handedness, much like his cohort DeSantis. But see, DeSantis took the leap into the presidential race, and he's getting beat down, which he deserves. He's being exposed for the just weird, unacceptable person that he is. Gregg Abbott put the brakes on because I don't know, maybe he was scared of Trump. Maybe he wanted to see if Trump and DeSantis would eat each other alive. Maybe he's waiting to see if Trump goes to jail so he can step in. But DeSantis, unlike Youngkin, has been playing it close to the vest, keeping his cruelty at home. The biggest thing that he did was shipping legal migrants, in other words, people that crossed the border legally that were in the country. And this is part of the federal government's problem. You let people into the country and you just leave them. Okay, you do whatever you got to do, and you come back with whatever time that is on that card, and we'll go to the next phase, and you continue to do what you got to do. This creates the migrant economy. This creates the automatic thing of second-class citizen, while you still can hold up the banner of being the most democratic nation in the world, technically. But Abbott with this latest move, just like with blacks after the Civil War, just like with Jews in Nazi Germany, is creating a whole new workforce. It's legal for incarcerated people to work. Some states it's mandatory that they work as long as they are healthy, and the status of their healthiness is determined by the state. So guess what? A lot of people work, like in jobs that support the facilities that they are incarcerated in: cooking, custodial work, maintenance work under supervision, that type thing. But a lot of people, not as many as in category 1, not as many people that work in the prison shops to produce goods to support the prison system, like desks and shoes. But there's a third category of people that are labor that can be basically rented out to the public for dirt cheap, as long as they can work in the daytime and be locked up at night. In a lot of states, it's legal. This is what happened to blacks in many southern states. The federal government moved in and busted it up in some states. But I think Abbott feels that he can get away with it under the guise of helping to solve the crisis at the border. There's going to be tons. This law goes into effect in March unless the Supreme Court steps in, and we don't know because we got the ultra-conservative Supreme Court that really doesn't give a damn about human beings or the law. So we don't know which way this is going to go, but most of the people that are on either side of the argument are not going to be the ones that are going to suffer the immediate effects of this law. Much like the law that DeSantis pushed through in Florida, the people that are going to be impacted the most are brown people, are people that speak Spanish, are people that came to this country under the idea that it was going to give them a step up, that they were escaping the oppression of their native country. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, that oppression was contributed to by the United States, CIA, destabilizing their governments in the 70s and 80s because they were afraid that they were going to turn communist. We're going to fuck you up economically, we're going to fuck you up socially, just to keep you from going communist. And now we have the tide, never ending, fluctuates, but there's always somebody coming from the south going to the north. Sound familiar? And trying to seek freedom, trying to seek a better life. Escaping from the south, going to the north. I don't know, maybe that's a theme that has to be written in history. Now, this thing with Abbott, and I got to give credit where credit is due. Stephen A. Smith was the one that really turned me on to this, because I looked at it like most people. Abbott is just a racist. Abbott is just stunting for the MAGA base. Abbott is just doing, this and that and this. But Stephen A. Smith hit the nail on the head. Abbott is creating a new source of slaves. The prison systems in a lot of states, especially southern states, some northern states, have always been accused of being overly harsh and coming close to creating a slave system as a system of punishment for being a criminal. This thing with the immigrants, if you throw in private prisons, which are legally under the same basic criteria, but are not affected by a lot of the rules of transparency that government-funded prisons, federal, state, and county prisons are under, you're going to create a system where somebody's going to profit off the suffering, and in a lot of cases, perhaps the suffering of guilty people that were incarcerated just based on suspicion. So there is no due process. So now you're making the Constitution says that everybody that is on U.S. soil, regardless of their citizenship status, is subject to the U.S. Constitution, the law as it is written and interpreted and practiced in the U.S. Constitution. So now you're making a whole class of people second-class citizens at the whim of someone just because they wear a badge. You're creating a system where there is going to be immense opportunities for profit. And that's profit built on the backs of people. They'll be compensated because the laws require that they be compensated. But they're going to be compensated pennies on the dollar. Some of these people that are going to get sucked up into this, and let me tell you right now, everybody that gets sucked up into this is not going to be an illegal alien. It's going to be somebody that's going to have problems proving their actual citizenship to the satisfaction of whatever Texas rednecks are going to be in charge of vetting the inmates. Abbott is not fooling enough people in this country to make this thing go smoothly. It's supposed to start March the 4th, but it's going to hit at the district federal courts of appeals. It's probably going to end up with the United States Court of Appeals. Not that that's any guarantee that his madness will be thwarted, because you got to realize the composition of the current Supreme Court of the United States. We don't even know if the current Supreme Court of the United States is going to allow a state to prosecute a former president just like anyone else, under the premise that no person is above the law, and the evidence that this president actually broke that state's laws is damning and overwhelming. But one way or another, until then, that president is going to get due process. These immigrants, legal or illegal, that are going to be arrested are going to be arrested on suspicion and jail, and there is going to be very little due process, or it's going to be due process that is just going to be aggravating to them because it's going to be overcrowded. So there goes the speedy trial. They're going to have a hard time contributing to their own defense because of the language barrier in many cases. The quality of their defense is going to be poor, and this is no knock against the public defender system, but a lot of these people, they're not going to be able to afford lawyers on their own. They're going to be public defenders. All of this is going to further clog up the system. All of this is going to further make justice for anybody in one of those areas more difficult, because the system is going to be strained because of the process of processing all of these immigrants. Basically, just for them to prove their status. And even if and in the end, when they don't prove their status, what's going to happen? They're just going to get turned over to ICE, and deported. The whole design is to create a rotating slave force. These people under Texas state law, they got to do something while they're incarcerated. Can't have so many cooks and janitors. And then you throw in the fact that a lot of these people are going to be housed in all of a sudden newly popping up for-profit prisons. It's going to be wild. It's going to be inhuman. It's going to be, for lack of a better word, or lack of better terminology, anti-democratic and un-American. But Abbott is all for this because Texas was formed for the rich. The whole Texas thing, separating from Mexico, driven by the rich, funded by the rich. The whole thing about fighting with Mexico was to protect the interests of the rich, the cattlemen, the cotton plantations, and later on, petroleum interests. The succeeding from the Union, fighting on the side of the Confederacy, all for the benefit of the rich. Poor people didn't need slaves. A lot of the cattle people didn't use slaves, because it was hard to use slaves in an industry where you had to have cattle miles, across miles and miles of grassland or grazing areas in the state of Texas. But that cotton thing, cotton was king, just like the rest of the South. Texas had ports. Texas was logistically close to other cotton states. There was money in cotton. Cotton was king. It needed slaves to be profitable. Texas was a slave state. That mentality about other people suffering for the enrichment of a few. Slavery might, the Civil War might have ended slavery, but it didn't end the mentality. A lot of people do not look at, and still today do not look at slavery as actually being an evil, because the people that are cast as slaves are always vilified and denigrated before they are made slaves. The people that are doing the enslaving are taught to and convinced that the people that they are enslaving are less than them. Maybe even not even fully human in some extent. Listen to the words of people like Donald Trump. Listen to the words of people like Steve Bannon. Listen to the words of people like Gregg Abbott, Ron DeSantis. There is a definite us and them, and they are less than and less deserving than we are, because we are this and they ain't. Abbott, if he's not legally put on hold, he's going to take the state of Texas back another notch in history and put the people of Texas under a different lifestyle. It's going to profit the rich, but it's still going to create hell on everybody else that they consider less than. Well, that's it for me. If I don't see you before New Year's, which I probably will, I'm wishing you a happy New Year's, and everybody just hang on to the drawers, because 2024 is going to be wild. But until then, peace out and God bless from Uncle Ricky at Uncle Ricky Shouts. Oh, by the way, don't forget, 2024 is a new year. I still need those subscriptions. I still need those likes, and if you feel like writing something, hit them comments sometimes. I need that. It doesn't cost you nothing. Maybe a little skin when you rub the button, but it's greatly appreciated by me and you too. So, peace out and God bless.